Jake Mitchell felt like his head was full of cotton. Everything hurt, but it was a distant kind of pain, like someone else's body was sending him signals from far away. He tried to open his eyes, but the light made his skull throb. The world came back to him in pieces. First the smell. It was clean but strange, like flowers mixed with metal. Then the sounds. Soft beeping noises and something that might have been music, but not like any music he knew. His mouth tasted like copper and sand. When he finally managed to crack his eyes open, the ceiling above him glowed with a soft blue light. Not electric light. This was different. It moved and shifted like it was alive. Jake tried to sit up, but his body refused to listen. His arms felt heavy, wrapped in something that tingled against his skin. Easy now. The voice came from somewhere to his left. It was soft and musical, but the words had an odd accent he could not place. You have been sleeping for 3 days. Jake turned his head slowly. The movement made the room spin a little. A figure sat in a chair beside what he now realized was some kind of bed. At first glance, she looked almost human. But as his vision cleared, he saw the differences. Her skin had a silver blue tint that seemed to shimmer in the strange light. Her eyes were larger than human eyes and colored like deep purple gemstones. Where hair should be, delicate tentacle-like things moved gently around her shoulders. "Where am I?" Jake's voice came out as a croak. His throat felt raw. "You are in the medical facility on Kepler 442b, she said. Her voice had layers to it, like hearing someone sing and speak at the same time. "I am Zaralin. I have been taking care of you." The name of the planet hit him like a punch. Kepler 442b. The memories came flooding back all at once. The transport ship, the mission briefing, the landing that went wrong when the Vraktor ambushed them in Crimson Valley. His squad of 12 human soldiers fighting alongside aliens he barely understood to protect civilians he had never met. "My squad," Jake said, trying again to sit up. This time Zaralin placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Her fingers were longer than human fingers, and her touch was surprisingly warm. "3 of you survived," she said quietly. "Amy Rodriguez and Ben Carter are recovering in the other tents. The rest—" She did not finish the sentence. Jake closed his eyes. 9 good soldiers. 9 friends. Gone. He could see their faces clearly. Now, Pete Williams laughing at his own bad jokes. Maria Santos always cleaning her rifle. Old Tony Clark, who talked about his farm back in Kansas. All dead because they stayed to cover the evacuation. The civilians, Jake asked. Did they make it out? Zaralin's large eyes studied his face with something that might have been surprise. Yes, all 3,047 made it to the transport ships. Your squad held the line long enough. She paused. Why do you ask about them first? Jake did not understand the question. Because that was the mission. Keep the civilians safe. But 9 of your people died. Does that not matter more to you than strangers? The way she said it made Jake look at her more carefully. She seemed genuinely confused, like she was trying to solve a puzzle that made no sense. They mattered, Jake said. They mattered a lot, but we knew the job when we signed up. Protect people who can't protect themselves. Zaralin was quiet for a long moment. Her tentacle hair things moved in, what might have been the alien version of scratching your head. You talked in your sleep, she said finally. For 3 days, you spoke of many things. Your homeworld. Something called Texas. A woman named Linda, who makes something called barbecue ribs. The way she pronounced barbecue made Jake want to smile despite everything. What are barbecue ribs? The question was so normal, so innocent, that Jake felt some of the weight lift off his chest. It's food, he said. Meat cooked slow over a fire with spices. My wife Linda makes the best ones in 3 counties. Your wife, Zarolin repeated, the word carefully. She is your chosen mate? Yeah, married 15 years this fall. Jake tried to shift position and winced as pain shot through his left leg. Assuming I make it home. Your injuries are healing well, Zarolin said, checking. Something on a device that looked like crystal and metal had a baby. The plasma burns were severe, but our biogel treatments work well with human tissue. Your leg was broken in 4 places, but the bone meld should have you walking in another week. Jake looked down at himself for the first time. His body was covered in bandages that glowed with the same soft blue light as the ceiling. They felt warm and seemed to pulse gently against his skin. Biogel? Living medicine, Zarolin explained. It reads your body's needs and provides healing directly to damaged tissue. Your species responds to it better than most. Very adaptable. The way she said your species reminded Jake that he was not just in a hospital. He was in an alien hospital, being treated by an alien doctor on an alien world. 3 months ago, humans had barely known that aliens existed. Now here he was, alive because of alien medicine. How long have your people known about us? Jake asked. Earth was discovered by our long-range sensors about 50 years ago, Zarolin said. But the Coalition decided to wait and observe. First contact protocols require careful study before interaction. 50 years? Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with his injuries. You've been watching us for 50 years? Standard procedure? Zarolin said, but something in her tone suggested she was not entirely comfortable with that answer. The galaxy is dangerous. New species must be evaluated carefully. Evaluated for what? Zarolin's tentacle hair things moved again, more. Agitated this time. For compatibility with galactic civilization. For technological potential. For ... She stopped. For what? Jake pressed. For threat level, she said quietly. The room got very quiet except for the soft beeping of medical equipment. Jake processed this information slowly. Humanity had been watched, studied, judged by alien civilizations for 50 years before first contact. And now, after humans had died saving alien civilians, they were still being evaluated as potential threats. And what's the verdict? Jake asked. Zarolin looked uncomfortable. The Coalition is ... divided. Some see great potential in humanity. Others worry about your unpredictability. Unpredictability? No rational species would sacrifice themselves for genetic strangers, she said, almost quoting something. Your actions in Crimson Valley have raised many questions about human psychology. Jake started to laugh, but it came out bitter. We're unpredictable because we saved your people? You had clear escape routes, Zarolin said. Tactical analysis. Shows you could have withdrawn with minimal losses. Instead, you chose almost certain death to save beings you had never met. This does not compute with standard survival models. Jake looked at this alien woman who had spent 3 days keeping him alive and realized that despite her advanced medicine and technology, she might not understand the most basic thing about being human. Maybe that's not a bug, he said. Maybe it's a feature. Jake spent the next few days learning to walk again. The bone meld treatment worked faster than any human medicine he had ever seen, but his body still needed time to remember how to move. Zarolin stayed with him during the physical therapy sessions, watching with those large purple eyes as he struggled to take steps without falling over. Your species heals remarkably fast, she observed, as Jake managed to walk from his bed to the tent wall without help. Most Coalition species require months of recovery from injuries like yours. We're stubborn, Jake said, breathing hard from the effort. My drill sergeant used to say humans are too dumb to know when to quit. Zarolin tilted her head in that way she did when trying to understand human expressions. This is meant as a compliment? In the military? Yeah. Jake sat down heavily in the chair beside his bed. Sometimes being too stupid to give up is exactly what you need. During his recovery, Jake learned more about the Battle of Crimson Valley from the reports Zarolin shared with him. The numbers were worse than he had thought. The Vrektor had come with 60,000 troops, expecting to overrun the evacuation, sight and capture, or kill the Coalition civilians hiding there. The Coalition had only managed to get 800 soldiers to the planet before the enemy arrived. Jake's squad of 12 humans had been attached to a defensive unit of mixed alien species. When the attack came, most of the Coalition forces had followed standard military doctrine, falling back to prepared positions and trying to hold long enough for the evacuation ships to load up. It was solid tactical thinking that should have saved most of the defenders, but the Vrektor were not fighting a normal battle. They were hunting. Every Coalition soldier they captured was torn apart slowly, and they broadcast the screams on all frequencies to terrorize the others. Standard doctrine said to retreat and minimize losses. The screams said something different. Jake's squad had broken ranks. Without orders, without support, 12 human soldiers had charged directly into the center of the Vrektor formation, not to achieve some tactical objective, but because they could not stand listening to their allies being tortured to death. The tactical analysis called it the stupidest military decision in recorded galactic history, Zarolin said, reading from her datapad. It violated every principle of modern warfare. But it worked, Jake pointed out. Yes, it worked. The Vrektor had never encountered anything like it. They were built to fight logical opponents who valued their own lives. 12 humans charging into certain death to save strangers completely disrupted their battle plan. Their formation collapsed trying to deal with your attack. The evacuation ships got away, and the remaining Coalition forces were able to escape in the confusion. Jake nodded. It sounded about right. Humans had a way of breaking things that were supposed to be unbreakable, usually by doing something so dumb that nobody planned for it. Amy Rodriguez visited him that afternoon. She looked tired but alive, her left arm in a sling that glowed, with the same biogel treatment Jake was getting. "Hey, boss," she said, settling into the visitor's chair. "How you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck," Jake said. "You?" "Like I got hit by 2 trucks." Amy grinned, but Jake could see the pain behind it. She had lost friends too. "Ben's doing okay. Took some shrapnel in the leg, but he'll be fine. The alien doctors are pretty amazing." "Yeah," Jake agreed. "Zarolin's been taking good care of me." Amy raised an eyebrow. "Zarolin? You two on a first-name basis now?" "She's been here every day for a week," Jake said. "We talk." "About what?" Jake thought about it. What did they talk about? Everything? It seemed like. Zarolin was curious about human culture in a way that went beyond professional interest. She wanted to know about Earth weather and human food, and why people kept pets, and what music sounded like. She had never heard of rain, and could not understand why humans thought sunsets were beautiful. "She's trying to figure us out," Jake said. "Her people have been studying humans for 50 years, but we still don't make sense to them." "Well, we don't make sense to me half the time either," Amy said. "Speaking of which, the Coalition big shots want to meet with us tomorrow. Some kind of debriefing." "What kind of debriefing?" Amy shrugged with her good shoulder. "The kind where they ask us a bunch of questions about why we did what we did. I get the feeling they're still trying to decide if we're heroes or psychopaths." That evening, Zarolin brought Jake something she called nutrition-based, but tasted better than it sounded. As he ate, she told him about her homeworld, Altair Prime. It was a place of crystal cities and floating gardens, where her people had eliminated war, poverty, and disease thousands of years ago. "It sounds perfect," Jake said. It is efficient, Zarelin corrected. But I am beginning to think perfect and efficient are not the same thing. What do you mean? Zarelin was quiet for a moment, her tentacle hair moving in what Jake had learned was a sign of deep thought. My people lived for nearly 800 years. In all that time, we learn much. We create beautiful things. We solve complex problems. But we do not how do you say it? We do not live with passion. Passion? Like what you showed in the battle. You knew you would die, but you chose to fight anyway because it was right. My people would calculate the odds, determine that sacrifice was illogical, and find another solution. Maybe that's why you guys have lasted so long, Jake said. Humans are always getting ourselves killed over stupid things. But also over beautiful things, Zarelin said. You told me about your wife Linda, how you met her at something called a county fair. You said you knew immediately that you would marry her, even though you had just met. This is not logical, but it is touching. Jake smiled, remembering. That day 20 years ago, Linda had been working at the ring toss booth, and he had spent $40 trying to win her a stuffed bear that probably cost $5. She had laughed at his terrible aim and kissed him when he finally gave up and bought her a corn dog instead. My people do not experience such feelings, Zarelin continued. We form partnerships based on genetic compatibility and shared interests. We do not have what you call love. That's sad, Jake said, and meant it. I thought so too, until recently. But now I wonder if perhaps we have lost something important in our quest for perfection. She looked at him with those purple eyes. You? Make me feel things I do not have words for in my language. Is this what humans call friendship? Jake thought about it. Over the past week, he had come to look forward to Zarelin's visits. She was easy to talk to, curious about everything, and genuinely seemed to care about his recovery. If she had been human, he would definitely call her a friend. Yeah, he said. I think it is. Then I understand now why your squad fought so hard, Zarelin said. They were not just protecting strangers. In a few short weeks, they had learned to think of us as friends. And humans will die for their friends. Sometimes, Jake agreed, when it matters. It always matters to humans, Zarelin said. That is what my people do not understand. For you, every life matters, even if logic says it should not. This is why the Coalition is afraid of you. Afraid? A species that will die for strangers is unpredictable. Unpredictable species are dangerous. Zarelin looked sad. But I think perhaps the galaxy needs more unpredictability. We have been logical for so long that we have forgotten how to be brave. Jake was walking around the medical compound without help when he overheard the conversation that changed everything. He had been making his way to the supply tent to get more of the protein bars that actually tasted like chocolate when voices carried through the thin walls of the command structure next door. The human anomaly continues to puzzle our analysts, said a voice he recognized as Admiral Vexvor, the Centauri commander who had visited the medical facility twice. The Admiral's voice had the clicking quality of his insectoid species. Their behavior in combat defies all established military doctrine. Perhaps that is precisely why it was effective, replied another voice. This one belonged to General Kyleman of the Vegan Republic, whose people looked like tall, thin humans with silver skin and no hair. The Vrektor could not adapt because there was no logical pattern to adapt to. Jake pressed himself against the wall, listening carefully. They were talking about him and his squad-like specimens in a laboratory. Reckless bravery bordering on mental instability. Admiral Vexver continued. No rational species would sacrifice themselves for genetic strangers. It suggests a fundamental flaw in their psychological makeup. Or, General Kyleman countered, it suggests an evolutionary advantage we have overlooked. Their unpredictability makes them dangerous opponents. The Vraector suffered unprecedented losses because they could not predict human behavior. There was a pause. Jake could hear the soft humming of alien electronics and the distant sound of transport ships landing and taking off. "The question remains," said a third voice that Jake did not recognize, "whether humanity represents a threat or an asset to galactic stability." Their emotional decision-making process could be useful in certain tactical situations, but it also makes them unreliable. Allies. Unreliable? General Kyleman sounded surprised. "They died to save our people. How is that unreliable?" "Because we cannot predict when they will make such sacrifices," the unknown voice explained. "They might die for us today and attack us tomorrow, if they perceive some moral wrong. Emotional species are inherently unstable." Jake felt his hands clench into fists. They were discussing whether humans were useful tools or dangerous animals that needed to be controlled. After everything his squad had given, after 9 good soldiers had died saving alien civilians, this was how the coalition leadership really saw them. "There is another factor to consider," Admiral Vexvor said. "The psychological reports from their medical staff. The humans are forming emotional attachments to coalition personnel at an unprecedented rate. The medic treating Staff Sergeant Mitchell reports unusual behavior patterns in herself." Jake's blood went cold. They were watching Zaralyn, too. "What kind of behavior patterns?" General Kylan asked. "Increased concern for the patient's emotional well-being beyond medical necessity. Extended time spent in non-medical conversation. She has requested to continue treating human patients exclusively, which goes against standard rotation protocols." The unknown voice spoke again. "This confirms our concerns about human influence on other species. Their emotional instability appears to be contagious. Perhaps," Admiral Vexvor said slowly, "we should consider relocating the surviving humans to a more controlled environment for extended observation." Jake had heard enough. He moved away from the wall as quietly as possible and walked back toward the medical tent, his mind racing. Extended observation. That was a nice way of saying prison. They wanted to lock up the humans who had saved their people and study them like lab rats. When he got back to his bed, Zaralyn was waiting with his afternoon medication. She took one look at his face and set down the medical scanner she had been calibrating. "What is wrong?" she asked. Jake looked at her for a long moment. Was she really his friend, or just another researcher studying the interesting human specimens? Her purple eyes seemed genuinely concerned, but then again, she was an alien. Maybe concern looked different for her people. "I need to ask you something," Jake said. "And I need you to be honest with me." "Of course. Are you my doctor, or are you studying me?" Zaralyn went very still. Her tentacle hair stopped moving entirely, which Jake had learned was usually a sign of strong emotion. "Why do you ask this question?" "Because I just overheard your bosses talking about the psychological reports you've been filing on me." Jake sat down on his bed and looked directly at her. "They mentioned unusual behavior patterns in yourself. Sounds like you've been reporting on our conversations." For a moment, Zaralyn said nothing. Then her shoulders sagged in what looked very much like human defeat. "Yes," she said quietly. "I was assigned to observe and report on human psychological patterns. All medical staff working with your species have been given this secondary mission." Jake felt something twist in his chest. It should not have surprised him, but it did. "So everything we've talked about, all those questions about Earth and my wife and barbecue ribs, that was all just research?" "At first, yes." Zaralyn looked miserable, but something changed. Humans form emotional connections so quickly, so deeply. It is unlike anything in my experience. Emotional connections? I began to care about your recovery beyond medical necessity. I found myself looking forward to our conversations. When you spoke of your home and your wife, I felt something I have never felt before. I think humans call it empathy. She paused, struggling with words. My people do not form friendships easily. We have colleagues, we have partners, we have family units. But what you call friendship, this caring for someone simply because you enjoy their company, this is new to me. So what did you tell them? In your reports? Zaralyn looked down at her hands. I told them that human emotional patterns are more complex than we initially believed. I told them that humans form attachments based on shared experiences rather than genetic or logical compatibility. I told them that you spoke of your squad mates with the same affection you show for your family, which suggests humans can extend familial bonds to non-relatives. That's all. No, Zaralyn's voice was barely above a whisper. I also told them that exposure to human emotional patterns appears to trigger similar responses in other species. I reported that I was experiencing what could only be described as friendship toward my patient. Jake processed this information, and they think that's a bad thing? They think it is dangerous. Emotional decision-making is considered a primitive, evolutionary trait that most species grow out of as they advance technologically. The fact that humans can induce such responses in other species is seen as a form of psychological contamination. Contamination, Jake repeated flatly. That is not how I see it, Zaralyn said quickly. I think perhaps we have lost something important in our evolution toward pure logic. You make me feel more alive than I have ever felt. Jake looked at this alien woman who had spent weeks caring for him and realized that whatever her original mission had been, she had become something more than a researcher. She had become exactly what she claimed, a friend. What happens now? He asked. I do not know. The Coalition Council is meeting to decide humanity's status in galactic civilization. They will determine whether your species is granted membership, placed under observation, or classified as a potential threat. And if they decide we're a threat, Zaralyn's tentacle hair moved in agitation. Then humanity's contact with the galaxy will be severely limited. Your people would be isolated to prevent further psychological contamination of other species. Jake stood up and walked to the tent opening. Outside, he could see alien soldiers and technicians going about their business. Some nodded respectfully. When they saw him, others looked away quickly. He was beginning to understand which ones saw him as a hero and which ones saw him as a dangerous animal. There's something else, isn't there? He said without turning around. Yes, Zaralyn said reluctantly. They want to relocate you and your surviving squad mates to a research facility for extended observation. They believe that studying human behavior in a controlled environment will help them understand your species better. A research facility. Jake turned back to face her. You mean a prison. I mean a place where you would be comfortable, but unable to influence others with your emotional patterns. Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. So let me get this straight. My squad dies saving 3,000 of your people, and your government's response is to lock up the survivors, because we might contaminate other aliens with dangerous emotions like friendship and empathy. Some members of the council feel that. Wait, yes. What about you? What do you feel? Zaralyn looked at him with those large purple eyes. I feel that the galaxy has been cold and logical for too long. I feel that perhaps we need more beings who care about strangers, not fewer. I feel that friendship is not contamination but a gift. She paused. I also feel that I do not want to lose the first real friend I have ever had. The news came 3 days later, crackling through the communication systems with the urgency of impending disaster. Jake was in the physical therapy tent, working through exercises to strengthen his rebuilt leg, when every screen in the facility suddenly switched to emergency broadcasts. The Vector had reaped faster than anyone expected. Long-range sensors showed a massive fleet moving toward Proxima Station, the Coalition's most important civilian center. Home to 50 million beings from dozens of species, Proxima Station was more than just a spaceport. It was a symbol of everything the Coalition represented, different species, working together in peace. Jake watched the tactical displays with growing dread. The Vrektor were bringing everything they had. 600 warships, including 3 of their planet killer dreadnoughts. The station's defenses were minimal, designed more for managing trade disputes than full-scale war. The nearest Coalition fleet was 4 days away at maximum speed. 50 million people, Amy whispered beside him. She had been working on her own physical therapy when the alert came through. They're all going to die. Ben Carter hobbled over on his crutches, his face grim. The evacuation ships can maybe get 10% of the population out before the Vrektor arrive. The rest... He did not finish the sentence. Jake studied the tactical information scrolling across the screens. The Vrektor would reach Proxima Station in 18 hours. Their previous attacks had shown they were not interested in conquest or occupation. They wanted extinction. Every civilian on that station would be slaughtered simply because they were not Vrektor. There has to be something, Jake muttered. Some weakness in their formation, some way to slow them down. Staff Sergeant Mitchell, said a familiar clicking voice behind him. Jake turned to see Admiral Vexfer approaching, flanked by 2 other Coalition officers he did not recognize. The Admiral's insectoid features were harder to read than human expressions, but Jake thought he looked desperate. "Admiral," Jake said cautiously, "we need to speak with you and your team privately." They were escorted to a secure briefing room where holographic displays showed the approaching Vrektor fleet in terrifying detail. Admiral Vexfer activated a privacy shield before speaking. "The Coalition High Command has authorized me to make an unprecedented request," the Admiral began. "We want to recruit human volunteers for a surgical strike mission against the Vrektor command ship." Jake felt his stomach drop. What kind of surgical strike? General Kyleman stepped forward, his silver skin gleaming under the artificial lights. "Our analysis shows that the Vrektor fleet coordination depends entirely on their flagship. If we can disable or destroy it during the initial attack, their formation will collapse into chaos. The station defenses could hold long enough for evacuation." "Sounds reasonable," Ben said. "What's the catch?" "The flagship will be protected by a defensive screen of 200 warships," Admiral Vexfer explained. "Any conventional attack would be detected and destroyed long before reaching the target. The mission requires a small team to infiltrate the enemy formation using stealth technology and detonate charges inside the command ship." Amy crossed her arms. "Still sounds doable. What aren't you telling us?" The 3rd officer, a tall being with blue fur and cat-like features, spoke for the first time. "The stealth technology only works for approximately 30 minutes. The team would have to penetrate the enemy defenses, board the flagship, locate, and destroy the command center, and escape, all within that time window." "And if the stealth fails?" Jake asked, though he was pretty sure he already knew the answer. "Then the team would be facing the concentrated firepower of the entire Vrektor fleet," General Kyleman said quietly. "Survival would be mathematically impossible." The room went silent except for the humming of electronics. Jake looked at his 2 surviving squad mates and saw his own thoughts reflected in their faces. It was a suicide mission. The Coalition was asking them to die because they were the only ones crazy enough to try something so hopeless. "Why us?" Amy asked. "I mean, I think I know why, but I want to hear you say it." Admiral Vexfer's antennae twitched in what Jake had learned was embarrassment. "Because human tactical thinking does not follow logical patterns. The Vrektor will not expect an attack that violates every principle of military strategy. Your unpredictability is our only advantage. You mean because we're stupid enough to try it, Ben said bluntly. Because you are brave enough to try it. General Kyleman corrected. No other species in the Coalition would volunteer for a mission with such low survival probability. Jake stared at the holographic display showing Proxima Station. 50 million civilians. Men, women, children from dozens of species, all going about their daily lives with no idea that death was rushing toward them through space. In 18 hours, they would all be dead unless someone stopped the Vector fleet. What about the research facility? Jake asked suddenly. I thought we were dangerous contaminants who needed to be isolated. The three officers exchanged uncomfortable glances. The Council's decision regarding humanity's status has been postponed. In light of current circumstances, Admiral Vexvor said carefully. So you need us to die for you before you decide whether we're worth keeping around, Amy said with bitter humor. The mission is entirely voluntary, General Kyleman said. No one will think less of you if you decline. Jake almost laughed. They had spent weeks analyzing human psychology, and they still did not understand the most basic thing about his species. When someone asked a human to save 50 million innocent lives, there was no real choice involved. I'll do it, Jake said. Count me in, Amy added immediately. Same here, Ben said, balancing on his crutches. Admiral Vexvor looked surprised, as if he had expected more debate. You do not wish to discuss it among yourselves? Calculate the odds? Consider alternatives? The odds suck. There are no alternatives, and 50 million people are going to die if we don't try, Jake said. What's to discuss? This is exactly what we were talking about, the cat-like officer murmured to his companions. Completely irrational decision-making process. No, said a new voice from the doorway. This is exactly what we need. Everyone turned to see Zaralyn entering the briefing room. She was not supposed to be there, but none of the officers seemed surprised to see her. Dr. Zaralyn, Admiral Vexvor acknowledged. Your psychological assessment of the humans? My assessment is that humanity has something the Coalition has forgotten, she said, moving to stand beside Jake. The ability to care more about others than themselves. You call it irrational. I call it the highest form of evolution. She looked directly at Admiral Vexvor. I also volunteer for the mission. The silence that followed was deafening. Jake stared at her in shock. Zaralyn, no. You're a healer, not a soldier. I am also the Coalition's leading expert on human psychology, she replied calmly. If this mission has any chance of success, you will need someone who understands how humans think in combat situations. Absolutely not, General Kyleman said firmly. Medical personnel are not authorized for combat missions. The mission requires infiltrating an enemy command ship and locating their control systems, Zaralyn pointed out. I have extensive training in alien technology analysis. My expertise could be crucial to mission success. Admiral Vexvor. Antennae twitched rapidly. Doctor, your request is highly irregular. Your species has not participated in military operations for over 2,000 years. Perhaps it is time we remembered how, Zaralyn said. Her purple eyes met Jake's. I have learned much from humans about courage and friendship. Now I wish to learn about sacrifice. Jake felt something shift in his chest. This alien woman who had spent weeks healing him, who had become his friend, despite the cultural barriers between them, was volunteering to die alongside him. Not because her government ordered it, but because she chose to. The mission parameters will need to be adjusted if we include non-human personnel, the cat-like officer said. Coalition species do not adapt well to high-stress combat situations. Then, maybe it's time some of us learned, said another new voice. Admiral Vexvor turned, his compound eyes widening in surprise. Admiral, what are you doing here? I heard about the human volunteers. Admiral Thixfer said. Jake realized this was a different Thexfor, probably a relative or clan member. I want to volunteer as well. The room erupted in shocked chatter from the other officers. Jake watched in amazement as more Coalition personnel began to arrive, each announcing their intention to volunteer for the suicide mission. A vegan engineer, a Centauri pilot, 2 more Altarian medics, even a couple of the cat-like beings whose species Jake had not yet learned the name of. This is unprecedented, General Kyleman whispered. Coalition species do not volunteer for missions with negative survival probability. Maybe we do now, said the vegan engineer, a tall woman whose silver skin gleamed with determination. Maybe the humans have taught us something about what it means to be truly alive. Jake looked around the room at these aliens who were volunteering to die alongside him and his squad. For weeks, he had wondered whether humanity would be accepted into galactic civilization. Now he realized the question was backwards. Maybe the real question was whether galactic civilization was ready to become more human. The mission briefing took place in the largest conference room on the base, but it still felt crowded with 23 volunteers from 6 different species. Jake looked around the table at faces both familiar and strange, all united by the same impossible goal. In 12 hours, they would either save 50 million lives or die trying. Admiral Thexfor stood at the head of the table, his insectoid features showing strain. I want to make the situation absolutely clear, he began. This mission has a projected survival rate of less than 3%. We are asking you to fly into the heart of the largest Vector fleet ever assembled and destroy their command ship from the inside. The holographic display showed their target in stark detail. The Vector flagship was a massive creature, more grown than built. With organic armor plating, it could withstand direct hits from Coalition heavy weapons. Its interior was a maze of corridors and chambers, all designed to confuse and trap intruders. The stealth generators will get us close, explained Lieutenant Commander Hayes, the vegan pilot who would be flying their infiltration ship. But once we're inside their defensive perimeter, we'll have maybe 20 minutes before they detect us. 20 minutes to board the flagship, fight our way to the command center, plant the charges, and get out, Amy summarized. Assuming everything goes perfectly, which it won't, Ben added cheerfully. He was still on crutches, but had insisted he could fight from a defensive position if needed. Jake studied the mission parameters one more time. The plan was tactically insane, logistically impossible, and strategically desperate. It was exactly the kind of operation that rational military commanders would never attempt, which was probably why it might work. There's one more thing, Jake said, addressing the room. I know why you all volunteered, and I appreciate it more than I can say. But I want to make something clear. This isn't just about saving Proxima Station. He gestured to the mixed group of humans and aliens around the table. If we pull this off, we'll have proven something important. Not just that humans can work with Coalition forces, but that Coalition forces can learn to think like humans when it matters. Zarelyn nodded from her seat beside him. You mean that courage is contagious? Exactly. The Coalition High Command is still debating whether humanity is an asset or a threat. They're worried that human emotional patterns will contaminate other species. Jake looked around the room. Well, here we are. 20 alien volunteers willing to die for strangers. If that's contamination, maybe the galaxy needs more of it. Dr. Kexelane, one of the cat-like beings whose species Jake had learned were called the Fulani, spoke up. My people have avoided military service for 800 years. We consider ourselves too valuable to risk in combat. Yet here I am, volunteering for a suicide mission. His feline features showed something that might have been amusement. Perhaps the humans have a point about the value of irrational behavior. The mission launch went smoothly, which made everyone nervous. Their ship, a sleek vegan courier modified with experimental stealth technology, slipped away from the base without incident. The journey to intercept the Vrektor fleet would take 8 hours, giving them time to review the plan and try not to think about the odds. Jake found himself sitting with Zarolin in the ship's small medical bay, watching her prepare field surgery kits for the mission. Her movements were precise and efficient, but he could see the tension in her posture. "Having second thoughts?" he asked gently. "Many second thoughts," she admitted. "My people do not handle stress well. We prefer to analyze problems thoroughly before acting. This mission goes against every instinct I have. So why are you here?" Zarolin was quiet for a moment, her tentacle hair moving in the way that indicated deep thought. "Because you taught me that some things are more important than survival. For 4,000 years, my people have chosen safety over courage, logic over compassion. We have lived long, comfortable lives while others suffered." She looked up at him with those large purple eyes. "I do not want to live that way anymore. I would rather die trying to save strangers than live, knowing I could have helped, but chose not to." Jake felt something warm spread through his chest. "That's very human of you." "Yes," Zarolin said with what might have been pride. "It is." The Vrektor fleet was even more intimidating up close. 600 warships arranged in perfect formation, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that hurt to look at directly. At the center of the formation, the flagship loomed like a small moon, bristling with weapon pods and sensor arrays. "Stealth generators are active," Lieutenant Commander Hayes reported from the pilot station. "We're invisible to their sensors, but remember, we only have 28 minutes before the field collapses." Their ship slipped through the outer defensive perimeter like a ghost, sliding between massive Vrektor cruisers that could have destroyed them with a single shot. Jake watched the tactical display, counting down the minutes until they reached boarding range. 15 minutes to stealth failure, Hayes announced. Flagship docking bay is 2 kilometers ahead. The boarding action was chaos from the moment. They breached the hull. Vrektor warriors were waiting for them, as if they had known the attack was coming. The creatures were nightmarish things, all claws and teeth and chitinous armor, but they fought with a rigid tactical doctrine that Jake's mixed human-alien team exploited ruthlessly. "Left corridor," Jake shouted, firing his plasma rifle at a group of Vrektor trying to flank them. "Amy, take point. Ben, watch R6. The alien volunteers adapted to human combat tactics faster than Jake had expected. Dr. Kexlane proved surprisingly effective with explosives, while the Centauri engineers created improvised barriers that channeled the enemy into kill zones. Zarolin stayed in the center of the formation, treating wounded team members with calm efficiency despite the chaos around her. They fought their way through corridor after corridor, following Zarolin's analysis of the ship's organic layout. Toward the command center, the Vrektor resistance grew heavier as they penetrated deeper into the flagship. But Jake's team had something their enemies could not predict: the willingness to take insane risks that no rational military force would attempt. 5 minutes. To stealth failure, Hayes reported over the comm system. "Whatever you're going to do it fast." The command center was a vast organic chamber filled with pulsing neural networks and bioluminescent control nodes. Vrektor officers scuttled between the stations like giant insects, coordinating the fleet's attack on Proxima Station. Jake could see tactical displays showing the station's defenses crumbling under the assault. "Charges are set," reported the vegan engineer, her silver hands working quickly over the alien technology. "But we need to get to the ship's brain stem to ensure complete neural shutdown." "Where's the brain stem?" Amy asked, reloading her weapon. Zarolin consulted her scanner. 3 levels down, at the ship's core. But the access routes are heavily defended. "Then we make our own route." Jake said, pulling out his last-shaped charge. Everyone back. The explosion blew a hole straight through the floor, revealing the organic passages below. Jake could hear Vector warriors rushing toward their position from all directions. In 2 minutes, their stealth field would fail, and the entire fleet would know they were here. Go, Jake ordered. I'll hold them off. Like hell, Amy said, taking position beside him. We started this together. We finish it together. Both of you go, Zaralin said firmly, moving to Jake's other side. I am the only one who can interface with their neural systems quickly enough. Jake looked at this alien woman who had become his friend, who had learned to be human in all the ways that mattered. Zaralin, no. Yes, she said, her purple eyes bright with determination. This is what friendship means, is it not? Caring more about others than yourself? The next 2 minutes were the longest of Jake's life. He and Amy held the entrance while Zaralin worked frantically at the brainstem interface, her delicate fingers dancing over organic controls that pulsed with alien life. Ben and the other volunteers fought a running battle in the corridors above, buying them precious time. Neural link established, Zaralin announced. Initiating cascade shutdown in 10 seconds. The Vector flagship shuddered as its organic systems began to fail. On the tactical displays, Jake could see the fleet formation wavering as the command. Ship lost control of its subordinate vessels. The attack on Proxima Station faltered as individual ship commanders tried to decide what to do without central coordination. Stealth field collapse in 30 seconds, Hayes reported. If you're not back at the ship by then, you're stranded. They ran. Through corridors filled with confused Vector warriors, up through the hole Jake had blown in the floor, past the bodies of creatures that had tried to stop them. The mixed team of humans and aliens moved like a single organism, each member covering the other's weaknesses. They made it to the docking bay with 15 seconds to spare. As their ship pulled away from the crippled flagship, Jake watched through the viewports as the Vector fleet dissolved into chaos. Without central command, the individual ships began fighting each other for dominance, their rigid hierarchy collapsing into civil war.